Hello and welcome. Now, if there's one thing I know, Disney knows how to celebrate the 4th of July better than any other place can.
Now, I might not be the most patriotic person anymore, but I feel like it'll always be a part of me, especially since I was a cast member at the American Adventure Pavilion in Epcot for a very short time, and therefore also have a soft spot for Disney Americana specifically.
And it's very safe to say that Disney has had such a great history with the idea of Americana.
Did you know that knowledge of our heroes was passed down to us by people telling stories?
Funny enough, I never encountered or even heard of this compilation DVD and video until this weekend. I was going thrifting at one of my favorite local record stores that has an amazing selection of secondhand DVDs, records, music, CDs, cassettes, anything physical media wise. And as I was looking within the Disney section, as I always do, I found this and was very, very intrigued and grabbed it right away. And as soon as I took a closer look, I realized how perfect is this to talk about with the 4th of July here. It's Americana.
Through the magic of Disney animation, you can own the fun and adventure of 4 legendary tales.
So apparently this was released back in 2001. And you might be thinking, oh, of course that makes sense, especially with what happened in September of that year. But no, this was released before then. And that to me is so intriguing and such a weird coincidence that we were given this showcase on American heroes before we all encountered one of the greatest tragedies in American history, which is so strange. But this is a lot more happier than that. According to IMDb as well, this was the only compilation DVD/video, because they still released on VHS at the same time, that was a thing. Like, this was the only straight-to-video compilation that they ever did for DVD. I don't know if that's actually true anymore, but that's IMDb, and they're pretty good with trivia.
According to the back of the DVD,
Disney celebrates the legends that inspired our country with classic stories of great American heroes in its all-new full-length anime collection, Disney American Legends. You'll meet the doers and dreamers who make America great, including John Henry, the railroad builder who proved the value of believing in oneself, journey with a giant lumberjack, Paul Bunyan, as he clears the land for American settlers, follow the trail of the beloved icon Johnny Appleseed, who planted apple trees which blossomed along the new frontier, then take an unforgettable ride with Casey Jones, the brave engineer who never failed to deliver the mail, no matter how difficult the route. Each story is introduced by celebrated actor James Earl Jones and filled with remarkable characters, adventures, and memorable songs. Gather the family together and enjoy these timeless tales, an experience no childhood should be without. Yes, this is American Legends. It's a compilation of 4 different short films that they did animations. What's so interesting about this compilation specifically is all 3 of the shorts, Johnny Appleseed, Paul Bunyan, and The Brave Engineer, were released originally in the 40s and 50s. John Henry is a brand new short that they did specifically for this compilation, which I know I've seen it somewhere before, and I don't remember where I've seen it, but I was rewatching this and I'm like, wow. This was for this obscure piece of media that no one knows about anymore, I'm sure. If you know about this, please let me know, because I had no idea until this weekend about it. It's almost 25 years old at this point.
Our first tale fired the hearts of Americans in the Allegheny Mountains in 1872.
The first short that we do get is John Henry, that was made in 2000 specifically for this compilation. And honestly, this was such a great animation short.
John Henry was directed by Mark Henn and voiced by Alfred Woodward and Jeffrey Jones, as well as Carrie Harrington performed all the songs in this film.
There's still a lot of touches of the Disney Renaissance on it. I love the art style of this so much.
I love how the story progressed from various backgrounds on a quilt. This is also why I wish 2D animation would come back. This art style was so unique. It was polished yet unfinished at the same time.
the story centers around John Henry, who is known for being very strong and is able to work on the railroad tracks and be able to outbeat any piece of machinery. He's a strong leader and very well loved and liked and knows how to get the job done. Personally, for me, the story wasn't as unforgettable to me as the animation was. I think the animation really tied it together and really set the backdrop for what was happening. On the surface, John Henry is this very strong-willed leader of the town, and with the help of his tools, he's able to continue to build the railroad and help establish all these towns, and everyone loves him, which is wonderful. And the conflict comes in to the fact where now the machines want to take over and build the railroad tracks that way, and he challenges himself against these machines, ultimately getting through, but also sacrificing his own life and dying at the end to prove a point.
The triumph victory looks like the same animation as Hercules.
I don't know what that message is supposed to do, because you sacrificed yourself to save yourself and save the town temporarily. Because unfortunately, if we're thinking in realism, someone else is gonna get through and they're gonna pull through with these machines, and technology is still gonna go forward, whether you like it or not, unfortunately. I know that's not what the message is, but that's the realistic message that I could get out of it. No, but seriously, this was a very, very enjoyable short. It's a really great way to start this film. And I loved the music as well as the animation. There was a lot of gospel within this film, and the songs were gorgeous. They were beautiful. I really don't know why this is so underrated and obscure, because these songs could be Disney classics, honestly.
No mountain too high, no valley too low, no river too wide, no place too far to go.
It fits in perfectly so well with all the rest of the Disney Renaissance songs, and this one is filled with so much motivation that why is this not playing at Epcot? Like, American history, it's perfect, it's right there, and we should be talking about it more.
These are the verses of an American poet, Rachel Lindsay, who admired our next hero. The hero, John Chapman, known to you and me as Johnny Appleseed.
Next up within the film is Johnny Appleseed, a film that I already reviewed when I did the Disney 365 reviews back in the day for Melody Time. It was featured in the compilation film Melody Time, which if you haven't seen that review, I'll link in the description below. To give you a quick recap, that film is filled with some of the most depressing short stories. And Johnny Appleseed is one of them.
Johnny Appleseed was directed by Wilfred Jackson and voiced by Dennis Day.
Johnny Appleseed is a story about this guy who dedicates his life to picking and planting apple trees, and dedicates his time to going across lands to keep on planting apple trees.
Shame to you, Johnny. You got faith and courage.
That's basically the story of it. He's helping the pioneers as they travel out west. He's also there to basically plant the apple trees to help them with their food sources. And he doesn't really have any human friends. His companions are all animals. And it's a sweet story. It has memorable songs, of course, that are the classic songs.
He's been good to me.
But overall, again, this is a very sad story. Basically, he gets greeted by his guardian angel who tells him, oh, go along your way and do this and plant apple trees all alone. His only friends are animals. And then he dies. And then he goes up to heaven and continues to plant apple trees in heaven. I don't know what the message is supposed to be, because that sounds like such a lonely, sad life. But at least it makes the pioneers happy. And Chip, what are you doing here?
Enter Paul Bunyan. Strong as 10 grizzlies, 63 axe handles high, and he had a soft spot in his heart.
Our third film was Paul Bunyan, and I actually never saw this one before. I think this was a standalone short film they just created as its own thing. But Paul Bunyan, the story, is also a very specific popular Americana tall tale. I mean, these are all tall tales. This was originally released in 1958, and it's a story about how Paul Bunyan became Paul Bunyan, but also how this entire town helps raise this gigantic baby that turns into a giant man, and he's a lumberjack.
Paul Bunyan was directed by Les Clark and voiced by Polly Bear as a narrator, and Thury Ravenscroft as Paul Bunyan. However, that's not the only famous legend he's voiced. He was also the voice for Tony the Tiger for over 5 decades, and the uncredited vocals for You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch. On top of all that, he's also the voice of Fritz from The Enchanted Tiki Room, and many, many, many other voices all over the Disney parks around the world.
And in the film, they constantly say he's 63 axe handles tall. So I did some math. I looked up how tall an axe handle was. They said it's between 32 to 36 inches. So I just took 36 inches and times that by 63, which gave me a 2,000 somewhat number. But I ended up doing the inches into feet. Paul Bunyan apparently would have been 189 feet tall. It's clearly a fantasy tale, but it's so interesting to see how wholesome this was. Because in reality, this would be a nightmare. This would be horror. This would be straight up horror film of a giant. And there were so many questions that I had while watching this. How did they sew his outfits? There's an entire scene of him jumping into the lake with the kids. And he basically splashes out half of the lake. And that's the joke.
That's what a problem me, oh my. When his front was in the water, oh his back was high and dry.
But like, how would this man bathe? How would he find a bathtub big enough for him? Because I know back then showers didn't really exist. There was no indoor plumbing. Like, you just think about bodily functions and how awful it would be. Like, that's stuff that you don't want to think about. But it's just like, what happened when he got sick and he had like a cold or something? Like, there would be no tissues that would help him out, or handkerchiefs. They would need a whole like sheet to give him a handkerchief. It's fantasy. I know it's fantasy. And it's, I guess, because of the fact that it's a whole documentary style in a way.
Short Gunderson's my name. I'm river foreman of a timber camp near the Oregon Trail. My outfit was mighty discouraged the day Paul Bunyan arrived.
In a sense, it's a fourth wall break type of film because a lot of the characters talk about how they grew up with Paul Bunyan and where they met him and how great a person he was. So it's a kind of a mockumentary, documentary style in an animated way as well. And I think that kind of brings a little bit more of realism to be like, oh yeah, there was this man that was like 189 feet tall that helped out the town and helped build us so much quicker than we could have done. Very wholesome. But in reality, it would not happen that way.
Our next hero's real name was John Luther Jones, but you probably know him as Casey Jones.
The last short is based on a real-life railroad engineer, Casey Jones, who I really am curious if this was their inspiration for Casey Jr. from Dumbo.
Yes, it was indeed. Thanks, Google.
This was originally released in 1950 as a short film.
The Brave Engineer was directed by Jack Kenny and narrated by Jerry Colonna, who was also part of Disney royalty. He was the voice of the March Hare in Alice in Wonderland, was the ringmaster in Pinocchio, and also narrated the Casey and the Bat short for Make Mine Music. It's based on legendary railroad engineer John Luther Casey Jones, and more specifically based on the Ballad of Casey Jones, probably most famously sung by Johnny Cash.
And just like I read with the description on the box about the story, the main focus is about the railroad engineer making it to his destination on time no matter what. Of course, a little bit more quirky where he goes all the way around as fast as possible, in through the ocean, around the bend, in through the mountains, etc., to speed through to get the mail on time. But it's just a short little tale about duty and responsibility. And those are the main messages of it. Apparently that makes you an American hero.
Then, cock-a-doodle-doo. Well, he knew his duty and he finally went west. Next time, take the train.
There really isn't too much to say on that one either because it's not too long. It's only 7 minutes. And outside of him running and rushing to get the mail across on the train, nothing else really happens.
Who will be the doers and dreamers of tomorrow? Use your imagination. What frontiers will you conquer?
Overall, the shorts themselves aren't that spectacular. And I think in a way this is a little bit dated in terms of how American history used to be. And in a way it is a little bit whitewashed, I'm sure. Especially because 3 out of the 4 characters are all white men of the past. The more important thing is the fact that this still gives preservation to history in terms of animation history, but also in a way in terms of how history used to be with these tall tale stories. And I think that's very important to be able to access at least. They're stories, they're not reality, but I think it shows wonderful roots from where we came from. And I love what James Earl Jones had to say with the introduction of each of these shorts. Like, I love the set he was on, and I love the idea of Americana.
Look for the heroes around you and celebrate them. You can find them in the past, in the present, even in the mirror. Because you're the stuff that legends are made of.
I think that's what makes this great. Even though they are American legends, they're more so just, hey, these are great people that had really wholesome traits and values and helped out society and helped out humanity. So I think this is still a really great watch if you can find it. And like I said, I'm more excited over the fact that this was like a really obscure piece of media, of Disney media, that I've never heard of before, and I'm sure many people haven't. And if you have, again, please let me know, because this completely just like went under the radar. Not that I was really interested in history when this first came out, but I'm really surprised that this has never been talked about more. But until then, hopefully everyone will have a safe and happy 4th of July for those who celebrate. And I wish I was down in Disney watching the fireworks, because they really do have the best fireworks. They really do have the best fireworks for any celebration. Disney fireworks will spoil you. Until then, happy celebrating. And as always, I hope you have a magical day, and I will see you real soon.